Hello, I hope you're all well. I'm fine as well, thank you. My name is Zandile, and this serves as a final part to the Thomas Sankara essay regarding the enemies of the people, as per his political orientation speech on the 4th of August, 1983 revolution that saw him become the head of state for 4 years until Blaise Compaoré and his faction committed the ultimate treason. Yes, I fully believe Compaoré either murdered or had his friend murdered, and I stand in solidarity with those seeking justice. In the previous essay, we spoke of the enemies of the people, who make up 3 groups. First are the imperialists who, in our context, are from the East, West, and global North. Secondly, they are the bourgeoisie, who consist of the state bourgeoisie, commercial bourgeoisie, and the middle bourgeoisie. And finally, they are the reactionary forces. In this insert, we continue with the breakdown where Sankara explains who constitutes the people, because in order for there to be enemies of the people, they have to be a people. In this category are the voltaic working class. This group is young and few in number, but through immense struggle have been able to prove that they are a genuine revolutionary class. This class has everything to gain and nothing to lose because it doesn't own any means of production, nor any pieces of property as under colonial structures. Sankara states that this group is convinced that the revolution is its business because it will emerge from it in a stronger position. Secondly, the petty bourgeoisie. Note that this group are different to the enemy class bourgeoisie. This group is vast, unstable, and is a social layer that wavers between the causes of the popular masses and the causes of imperialism. So they can be swayed either way, but often end up taking the side of the popular masses. This class is the most diverse of all the groups and includes small shopkeepers and petty bourgeoisie intellectuals like civil servants, college and high school students, private sector employees, and artisans. The last 2 categories I've taken creative license and somewhat distorted the speech of Sankara because he firmly lists these 2 as enemies of the people in his speech. However, on reading it, to me it personally reads as though he places them as part of the people, but they are corrupted and co-opted by the system and its requirements of capitalism and imperialism. These are the voltaic peasantry and the lumpen proletariat, whom, if ideologized correctly, can be a part of an effective and revolutionary petty bourgeoisie. The voltaic peasantry had the biggest majority, consisting of small peasants tied to small plots of land due to a decline in collective property since capitalism took over. Due to the penetration of capitalism into the countryside, where this class peasantry resides, the voltaic peasantry, tied to small-scale production, embodies bourgeois productive relations. This means that the peasantry is an integral part of the petty bourgeoisie. This class, however, paid the ultimate price and the highest toll for imperialist domination and exploitation. Sankara posits that they are an enemy because they become a useful tool of reactionary forces and political parties due to the economic and cultural backwardness that keeps them isolated from progress and modernization. However, even with all of this, it is stressed that the peasantry has a large stake in the revolution and is, due to its numbers, a crucial force of revolution. And finally, we have the lumpen proletariat. These are the declassed individuals who are without jobs and are willing to hire themselves out to reactionary and counter-revolutionary forces to carry out their dirty work. Because of this, if utilized and channeled correctly, they can become the revolution's most ardent defenders because it gives them something to do that is useful. Now, I understand that it's very easy to become overwhelmed with the terms and their definitions and meanings, and therefore ignore the ramifications of revolutionary ideology. That's fair. However, in the first part, I wanted South Africans to ask themselves if they see themselves or anyone they know in any of the categories between the imperialist, the upper class bourgeoisie, and the reactionary forces. It would certainly be interesting if people did see themselves in any of those categories, but I would bet a lot more people see themselves in at least one of these groupings under the people. And it would be easy to understand why. No African wants to be a bigger part of the problem. Even those who have sold Africa out and perpetuated systems of colonialism would swear on their lives that they have not deliberately harmed Africans, because most of us sincerely believe that if given the opportunity to fight for liberation, we would be first in line. But these categories allow for understanding of the systemic way in which imperialists weaponized those that they dispossessed and formed hierarchies of oppression that mirrored European societies. It also allows us to understand how Africa is still colonized after a consistent, sustained anti-colonial and anti-enslavement struggle that resulted in 50+ years of decolonization movements, beginning with the independence of Ghana under Kwame Nkrumah. But the reason I highlighted Thomas Sankara specifically goes beyond all of that. I'm a stan of the man as a human being, and one of my favorite books is the collection of his essays and speeches titled Thomas Sankara Speaks. And I believe in a lot of the principles that he espoused, such as the people doing for themselves and the government allowing the means to do that, as well as a community being the center of African survival. I also love that he understood patriarchy and that African women did internally have a unique struggle to African men due to the social aspects of colonization. This also means, however, that I struggle to critique him, which is a failing on my part, because one of my many unresolved issues with internal African and South African organization is our inability to understand that critique is not necessarily hate, and our history and present shows that we must critique African leaders, so we can look out for signs of inconsistency and sabotage. Perhaps if internal critique of Nelson Mandela, Robert Mugabe, Paul Kagame, Kwame Nkrumah, and other leaders had been allowed to flourish internally earlier on as they were ascending to African leadership status, we might have been able to avoid some serious pitfalls. On the other hand, I also appreciate that it's also much easier to make critiques when a full picture can be formed because the story is complete. Mandela, Nkrumah, Mugabe, and Sankara are now ancestors, and as such, we have a full picture to form their story. But my critique of Sankara is one that we all probably would have struggled with at the time. So it's not even really a critique. He failed to continuously evaluate internally. He was brilliant at laying out the ideological enemies, but he failed to account for the change in ideological grounding based on external changes. And we can't even fault him, because this is, after all, the man who brought him to power. But either way, that is how Blaise Compaoré managed to contribute to the continued decline of an entire continent and the reversal of its liberation, after once having been one of its greatest heroes. So in conclusion, I say all of this to say that knowing where you stand in your ideology and class formation allows you to understand where others stand in theirs. And with that understanding, we are better able to recognize why South Africa is a crime scene without internalizing our own inconsistencies in contributing to imperialism. But more importantly, it allows us to understand what we need to do to get justice.